On the face of it, it looks like we don't have a lot of information on how gear, abilities, weapons work within Anthem. But from the personalization livestream, which purely went over vanity and how a javelin looks, it still gave us a good amount of information. So I wanted to do my best to sort of explain the system with some pictures and diagrams, sort of using the UI from the personalization livestream, and going, this is how it's going to work for customization. Granted, there's still a lot of stuff we don't know, which I'll go over in a second, but my name is Ryan Central, and we're going to be going over how loadouts work, weapons, abilities, how all of that pieces together within Anthem. If this kind of topic in Anthem does tickle your fancy, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll be doing more content like this. This is my main focus on the game, is how gear and abilities and getting loot and all that stuff is going to work. So if you're interested in that, do subscribe and I'll keep you up to date on everything. I promise. Pinky promise. To make this easier to explain, I've broken it down into 5 different areas. We have weapons, we have gear, which is a bit of an awkward name, but we'll go onto that in a second. We have the loadouts, which is the presets of your gear and personalization. You have your armor, which is your head, shoulders, chest pieces, that kind of thing. And miscellaneous, which is down to stuff that we don't quite know an awful lot about just yet, but we know that they are in the game and can be disguised as all sorts of different things. We'll start with the weapons, which are the shooty guns. As you could probably imagine, fairly straightforward to explain. There's all sorts of different types of gun in the game that have different names. For example, if we're looking at the gameplay from the Ranger customization livestream, here's a weapon called a Defender, whereas the Interceptor is something called a Fulcrum. But in terms of what javelin could use what weapon, there is this diagram that I made on screen showing you that basically Colossus can't use pistols or any small weapons, but nobody else could use the big machine guns that a Colossus can. What is also fairly interesting to highlight is that you can see all of this stuff in the top right of the personalization stuff from the live stream. You can equip 2 weapons at once, they can both be the same kind. So you can equip 2 shotguns, for example, as a ranger if you wanted to, but you can mix and match your weapons in that slot. Also on the personalization side of things, you can see the weapon on the side of the ranger here, but because that other slot isn't filled up, we can't see it on the other side, right? So that's how the weapons work. As I said, fairly straightforward to explain. You can personalize and color them, but it works in a little bit of a different way to how you personalize the look of your javelin's shoulders or chest or that kind of thing, right? It's a little bit different, but works similarly. Now I want to go over the gear, and as I said, it's a bit of an awkward name because it actually means the abilities in the game. We went over this quite some time ago talking about subclasses and how these abilities work in game. It boils down to your abilities equip into your actual javelin in certain parts of your gear slot. If we use the example of a ranger, seen as we saw the most from the personalization livestream, from the perspective of a ranger, they have 3 gear slots as does every other javelin, but it differs on each javelin where it is. For example, the Ranger has an assault launcher gear slot, which you can see here with the arrow pointing to it, and also has a grenade gear slot, which we don't have anything to point to because it's a physical grenade that he throws, right? So in his pocket or whatever. And each of the abilities are equipped into these gear slots. For example, as you're seeing on screen, the Ranger has the Seeking Missile equipped, and also the frag grenade, but can also have all of these abilities equipped in that assault launcher gear slot, such as an energy pulse, a venom dart, or a blast missile. The frag grenade is a very vanilla style, but you can have a frost grenade, a sticky bomb, an inferno one. You get the idea. You can have different versions of abilities that equip physically into your javelin. And as I said, this varies from javelin to javelin. For example, the Storm has seals on its arms where its abilities equip into. The Colossus has a big mortar. Yada yada, you get the point. All of these abilities that equip into the gear slots too have different rarities, but going all the way to common, which is what I believe these abilities on the right hand side are, with the levels next to them, all the way to like legendary versions which might have certain stats or perks. For example, doing more fire damage if it's a fire based ability, slowing the target, doing more damage, you get the point. But also each javelin does have a support slot which isn't shown on screen at all, but these are other abilities that can be used as utility, such as a taunt for a Colossus, or a muster point for a Ranger, which is like an AoE effect that you can put down, like a Warlock can in Destiny, I would believe. So that's the main thing, that these abilities equip physically into your javelin via gear slots. And now I want to go over loadouts now that we've gone over both of those different things. Loadouts are the presets of your javelin, and these go into both customization, which is how your javelin plays, the abilities that it has, the weapons that it uses, to personalization, which is how a javelin looks, the vanity side of stuff. And loadouts can be used for both sections. Let's use this as an example. We have 3 different rangers here that look exactly the same. Oh, it looks like they're holding hands. Aww. The first one has a frag grenade and a homing missile equipped. The second also has a frag grenade equipped but has an energy pulse. The third one also has an energy pulse but has a different grenade with the Inferno one. You get the idea. You can have different variations of what a javelin's abilities have, so you can have different mix matching. No one javelin is going to be the same, right? Because you have all of these different abilities that you can equip. So even though they all look the same, they all play very differently with different abilities, and you can mix and match whatever abilities that you like to play. For example, you're a big fan of having this frost build as a ranger, so you equip the frost grenade and a spark beam, for example. Or you have a legendary sticky bomb that you want to run because it's really good, so you're using that for the time being. You can have the same ranger javelin as somebody else but can play significantly differently. However, also for loadouts, you can have all of these javelins having the same exact gear, for example a frag grenade and a homing missile, but will have 3 different looks, because the way that your javelin looks and plays is completely separate. So you can have 3 different loadouts of a ranger, all looking the same with different abilities and different playstyles, or they can all have the same abilities and playstyles but look very different. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do there. It seems on screen you can have 8 different loadouts for each of the javelins, so you can mix and match purely on vanity stuff, or whether you want different loadouts and playstyles based on what abilities synergize with one another. And you've seen a couple of examples on screen of how that system would look and play. But now we're getting into the areas that we know very little about, and we're starting off with armor. There's a lot of questions in terms of how stats and progression and how getting this loot works in the game that we still don't know an awful lot about just yet. But from the sounds of this John Warner tweet, he says that helmet, arms, legs and chest can all be individually swapped out. Above and beyond that, paint and materials can be applied. Now this could be just about personalization. As you've seen on screen, all of those areas come to lock in with how you equip your helmet, your arms, your legs and your chest. That's how the personalization of your suit separates into certain areas. But I'm pretty sure that this also might apply to the certain gear abilities too. I'd be very surprised if, say, you could break it down any further than that. I was talking to William from your Anthem about this, and he seems to agree with me there that the devs were saying that it comes down to gear abilities and perks too. But there's no confirmation on that yet, so I don't want to take you on this wild goose chase, but bear that in mind. That is probably, fingers crossed, how it's going to work. However, if you're on the side of, oh, I don't want it to be like Destiny where you only have 4 gear slots that you can put armor pieces into, there are other areas that you will be able to customize in terms of stats and perks and those kind of areas, and I'm putting it under Miscellaneous. This was a question that I highlighted like a couple of weeks ago that kind of covers everything that comes under this subsection. The first is talents. There is a talent tree in the game, but that isn't to do with specifically a javelin, but just you as a character as a whole. This might include rather generic stuff such as how long you can fly in the air before you have to hit the ground because your engines are overheating. Could be how long you can stay underwater. There's nothing to do with gameplay such as doing more damage or staying alive longer. That tends to come under the stats of your build. Speaking of which, there are stats to do with everything that we've gone over too. I think even the gear pieces such as the abilities might have stuff like plus 20 armor or plus 20 health. They might have certain stats built onto those like a World of Warcraft piece might do. Such as a weapon, right? You have a sword, but it might give you more agility, more crit chance, those kind of areas. But again, not confirmed, so I wanted to put it under this section. But it does look like also we'll have this talent tree, which again we don't quite know everything that's on there. We have stats and perks that might be involved. There also might be stuff like a gem system or enchanting kind of stuff like in typical RPGs. Ben Irving confirmed this stuff, not necessarily saying that it was a gem system or enchanting, but they said they'll cover that in a future stream. So, and also one thing that I did want to highlight for all of you theory crafting nerds that watch a lot of Astacross for Destiny, for example, you can have separate loadouts and builds based on stuff like stats, making sure that loadout A is higher speed, higher armor but lower health, slot B is normal speed, high health but low armor, and Ben says it applies to all of the things that you can equip, which is what I said earlier. So there is a lot of meticulous, heavy detail and depth that we haven't gone into just yet, but it is a relief almost to know that it exists, right? So just to go over everything really quickly, we have the weapons, which are straightforward to explain. Gear is a certain part of your javelin where your abilities equip into, and you can interchange those to certain abilities that might be really rare and hard to get, or just ones that you prefer to run because you want to have a very hard-hitting Colossus build, or maybe you want to have a tanky build and run some of the support slots that allow that. Then you have loadouts, which allow you to interchange certain elements of vanity, your customization, which is how your javelin plays. You can switch those out fairly easily and also work out presets for what javelin you want to run. You of course have the armor slot, which honestly we don't have an awful lot of info on yet, and Miscellaneous, which again doesn't really answer an awful lot of questions, but does give us some insight to know the sort of hidden depth that's going to be in Anthem when it comes to micromanaging certain stats. So if you like to play those games like World of Warcraft where you need to open up a spreadsheet to work out your best damage output, for example, I think you're going to like this game. But that's everything that we know about how gear, loadouts, customization all works within Anthem at this point, but I'm sure that we'll hear more in the future. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very soon. Take care.